Hey there and welcome to Jeep Sheep TV. Today is our second part of the Secret Spire video, which was filmed in Moab, Utah from the Easter Jeep Safari trip. As you can see, I am back home, so clearly I made it back from Utah in one piece, but I've gained a couple pieces since then. So anyway, so the Secret Spire Trail comes with a rating. The Red Rock group out in Utah, they have been so gracious as to rate the trails for us, and the Secret Spire Trail comes as a 3. Now you can go on their site and you can see what that means, but to me the 3 was both helpful but also left some questions. So if you are driving a vehicle that say is maybe like a TJ or a JK but it's bone stock, or maybe you're driving like a CJ7 or a YJ and you've done a couple things and you just aren't so sure if Moab is the place for you and what trails you can hit, that's what this series is for. This is for you to understand what's going on and whether or not your vehicle can hit these obstacles. So hopefully by the end of this video, you will confidently know whether or not you can hit the Secret Spire Trail without running into any real difficulties. To give you a better idea of what to expect when hitting Secret Spire, I've devised a rating scheme of my own that will give you a better idea of what to expect. I have a few different categories. The first one is approach, and I'll explain these. The first one is approach, departure, breakover, articulation, clearance, traction, and danger. So the approach, for starters, is when you're approaching an obstacle, can you climb it without rubbing your bumper? Departure is the same thing but in reverse. So you're going down an obstacle. Breakover is whether or not you can get up and over a hump without scraping your belly pan. Articulation is how much do you articulate when going over an obstacle? Do you end up throwing a wheel in the air, which then leads to traction? If you throw a wheel in the air, you're losing traction in a lot of situations. And this one is also like, is it muddy, is it sandy, things like that. Clearance is more like, are there big boulders that you're going to either hit oil pans or your differential on, or exhaust? And the last one is danger. And danger is things like low visibility. So if you're going up a steep incline and you have to turn, but you can't see, sideways inclines, so if you're getting kind of tippy, drop offs, so maybe you're close to a cliff edge and you could definitely die. Just gonna throw this out there. This trail, none of the things I listed in danger, you really have it all. So you don't have to worry about any of that. But we'll get into it. Each one of these categories I have given a rating to. It's just a 1 through 3 scale. It's very simple. 1 being, okay, absolutely, it's very easy, no problem. 2 being, this is the accurate amount of difficulty for this vehicle. And 3 being, you need ulterior methods, whether that be to hit it with speed or to modify your vehicle and you need different parts. And that would be a 3. Now these ratings are very vehicle specific, so the part of this video that's quite important is that I explain my vehicle to you, so that way you know what my baseline is, and then you can compare my Jeep to whatever you're driving, and that'll give you a very good idea as to whether or not you can do this trail. Alright, for this part I'm just going to show you some of the modifications that have been done to my Jeep and the strengths and or pitfalls that they have given me, which will impact how I perform on this trail. So the first one is tires. These are 31-inch tires, so that is going to aid me in clearance. I believe the factory tires, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe they were 29, so 31 is bigger. You can also see that these tires are brand new, and they are the BF Goodrich KO2s. These are very highly rated, and I will add to that. I'll champion it. They are fantastic tires, and I've seen very good traction with them. So I'm going to see benefits in both traction as well as clearance from this modification. Now the next one, you'll notice that this shackle is a little bit larger, and then this spring here. This is a lifted leaf spring, and that is also a lifted shackle. So this is a 1.5-inch lift, and I believe that the shackle is maybe like a 1/2 inch taller than normal. That's going to give me a little bit of lift, which is going to help my breakover angle, and it's going to help me clear some of the obstacles that I'll encounter. Now, this here is a little towing bumper, or hitch or whatever. It has served many purposes throughout the years, and it's been modified a few times. But as you notice, it hangs down. And this, not on this trail, but in Moab in general, has given me some issues where I rubbed the tow hitch on a rock. And as a result, you can see it's bent a little bit where I fell onto the tow hitch. So that right there is my departure angle, which is measured from the center of your wheel on the bottom here to the lowest hanging bit or point there. And so my departure angle is actually quite poor. And that, like I said, did not affect me on this trail, but it was a problem. Working forward in the vehicle, we have probably the most important aftermarket modification I have for off-road prowess, which is this bad boy right here. This is a shackle reversal kit. You'll see that I have a pivot point in the front. Oh, I apologize. And a shackle in the rear. Now, what this gives me is, you see the shackle's quite tall. Before, the shackle would hang down here, quite far. And I oftentimes would use it as a battering ram to ram it into rocks because I had no better option. It hung down so far that it really caught on just about everything. So what I've done here is, this is my approach angle, measured the same way, the center of your wheel to the lowest point on your front end, and I raised that lowest point up quite a bit. Other advantages this gave me was it seemed to allow me to articulate a little bit better, but I'm told that's not the case in every vehicle. So there's that. But it did for me, and that was quite nice. It also brings your steering together a little bit closer, which is good for on-road stability, so that's pretty cool. Now, the other thing that I did with this YJ is the YJs are known for their central axle disconnect system. This is also in the Cherokees for a little while as well. And so that would be a two-piece axle with a collar that combines them, but then the collar can come off, and then you don't have four-wheel drive. It's for fuel economy, but in a lot of situations, that system is unreliable and can cause you to not have four-wheel drive when you need it. So I replaced it with a Cherokee solid axle from a later year Cherokee that just goes all the way through, and that's been deleted. Not something that gave me a whole lot of advantage on the trail, but just some peace of mind that I'll always be in four-wheel drive when I'm wanting to be in four-wheel drive. The Bilstein 5100 shock, which again is not a huge difference in off-road, although it does allow the spring to droop quite far. It's not too different than the stock shock, but it does ride a heck of a lot nicer, so those come highly recommended. All right, and then lastly, I have my bumper, which it's not the lowest point, so it's not going to affect my approach angle too much, but it is nice to have. You can mount things onto it and ram it into things if need be, which I did not need. And also the same with the side rails. In this situation, on this trail, those were not overly necessary, but in a lot of situations, they do protect your body from damage. All right, the first part of this is approach. This trail didn't have a whole lot of approach challenges, but it did have a couple approach obstacles, and I'm going to show you both of those real quick. So the scene that you're going to see probably right here, I'm coming up to these rocks, and it is both wheels approach. Okay, so this is probably the easiest kind because I'm not including any type of articulation, so the danger rating is relatively low. You just need to climb it. And you can see that the rock comes up just about half the tire, and so I have absolutely no issue whatsoever. I may have had a little bit of issue if I still had those taller shackles on the front of the vehicle, but since I don't, no problem at all. Now the second video here, you see this brand new JL in front of me. He climbs right up it with no issue, and the same story goes for me. No problem at all, climb right up, and it's really not that bad. No issues with traction whatsoever. Pretty easy trail as far as approach. This gets a rating of a 1. Okay, that leads us into departure. So departure, again, is when you're going down an obstacle, the biggest thing to worry about is control as well as scraping. So you don't want to scrape your gas tank or your rear bumper or really anything on the obstacle as you're coming off of it. In these two examples that I'll show you, I don't do that. I don't scrape my bumper because they're pretty mild. They're pretty short, and I have no issue, even though my bumper sticks out pretty far for YJ. Now, in this video here, what you're going to notice is that my wheel starts to slide as I'm coming down. The reason for this is you can kind of see a little bit right here. There's a little bit of articulation going on, and so when you articulate, a lot of weight gets put on one wheel and then the weight comes off of another. So you are going to see a traction situation when there's a lot of articulation. And as you see here, I'm articulating and my front tires did begin to slide. Now, a lot of that has to do with my driving. On this trail, I didn't go into 4-low much, and I just kind of rode the brakes through it all, and that's what caused this slide. Had I been in 4-low first gear and allowed it to engine brake down this obstacle, I probably would have had a lot more control. So again, this trail, I didn't scrape my bumper, and even though I slid, I think I could have avoided it. That gets departure as a 1. The next section of this is breakover, which is not very necessary on this trail, and actually most of the trails I was on in Moab didn't have a huge issue with breakover. Breakovers, a lot of times, especially around the Midwest, you'll get these dirt berms, and a lot of people will get stuck on those. That has a lot to do with your breakover angle, because the longer Jeeps will get stuck on these berms and they'll teeter, and that's not a good thing. But you'll also see this when rock crawling. If you have a large rock, that your breakover angle matters. On this trail, not at all. Everything was very continuous and or flat. But what I will talk to you about is articulation. So I explained a little bit earlier that my articulation has increased with some of the modifications I've done. Another huge thing that, again, I forgot to mention is I don't have track bars in my Jeep, and that's the key to my articulation. In any vehicle other than the YJ, I don't recommend removing your track bars, but in this one, because of the way that the leaf springs are laid out, it's perfectly safe to remove those, and you do gain a lot more on-road comfort as well as articulation. Now, also, I do have my sway bars removed, which I don't recommend if you do a lot of on-road driving unless you're comfortable with it, but that is another huge factor for your articulation. In this video here, you can see that there is decent amount of articulation, and I do work out my shocks quite a bit. Probably should have bought some bump stops, but you can see that in this video very well. As we had the GoPro under the vehicle, you can really watch as the axle moves up and down with the rocky surface. This trail, the articulation wasn't enough for you to kick a wheel in the air, but it was enough for you to feel the axle move and just kind of have fun with it, if you will. Because it didn't present any danger and no wheels went in the air, articulation is again a 1. Clearance is another one where you don't really have a lot of issues with clearance. Clearance deals a lot more with rocks and or obstacles, or especially ruts. If you're driving in a muddy area and you have deep ruts, clearance is huge because you drag your axle on the rut. Or in a really rocky path, you might have some rocks that want to eat your differential or your oil pan. This trail had none of that. Like I said before, it's pretty flat or continuous. The next thing is traction. Now, traction is pretty crucial when you're off-roading. Fortunately, out in Moab, they call it slick rock, but it ain't slick. The patches of rock that we had that were slick rock, they were incredibly grippy. It's like driving on sandpaper, and honestly the best surface that you could ever be on. So what was fun about that is we were going up some inclines that were a little bit steep, not a lot on this trail, but up some of the steeper inclines you'd have to take a turn or your axle's articulating, and no issue at all, no wheel slip, no issue with traction. I ran this trail at 30 psi, which for some people is full pressure. My tires run around the 45 range. I think they max out at 50, and so I did air down a little bit to 30, and I had no issues the entire time, so I didn't feel that I needed to air down further to gain traction. There are some patches of sand on this trail, as you saw when I was sliding, but again, that was something that I could have avoided, and the sand patches weren't at any dangerous places. So as far as traction goes, this trail also gets a 1. Okay, and that leads us to danger. Now, this trail takes you through some of the most breathtaking scenery that Moab has to offer, but it doesn't make you drive on it, if that makes sense. So the trail that we were on was, although gorgeous and you could see huge steep cliffs and canyons, what we were driving on was relatively safe, and we weren't next to any cliff edges, no like steep grades with drop-offs or anything like that. So aside from this video here where I'm going up an incline, I can't really see where I'm going and I had to do a slight turn. Not a big deal. Aside from that, this was a very danger-free trip. So if you're someone who is planning on driving your vehicle home, this is an awesome trail for you. This has a danger rating of 1. Now, every category had a rating of 1 and you're thinking, okay, that's really cool, but I went out to Moab to have a bunch of fun with some crazy off-roaders. You know what? This trail still is a good time. Although the danger rating or the excitement rating was really low and some of the obstacles had a low rating as well, you can drive there, you can hit the trail, it takes you all day, you get to see some of the most beautiful landscapes, take some really good pictures, and you can drive home without any damage to your vehicle. So I still highly recommend it. Don't go into it thinking that you're going to break a bunch of stuff and, you know, make some crazy adventure out of it, but it is a nice relaxing ride and it's a beautiful way to see the countryside. Oh, I should have a different view. Whoa. Hey, thank you for watching. If you enjoy videos like this, hit the subscribe button. There are plenty more to come. This was not the only trail I hit out in Moab. Also, we met some really cool people out in Moab, and the great way to connect with them and see what they're doing to their Jeep is through a website called REVKIT. I'll put that somewhere, and there will be a link down below. Go ahead and create yourself a build page on REVKIT, and while you're creating it, you can type in your referral code as JeepSheepTV, and you'll be added to our group. So you can see all the other people who found REVKIT through this group or decided to join the group after the fact. So I'll see you on REVKIT, and in the meantime, like I said, hit the subscribe button, click the bell so you get notified, and I've got a lot more coming.